Hello and welcome to SRIRAM's IAS. In this series of Indian economy, we are discussing the Indian economy book by SRIRAM sir himself chapter wise. And last lecture was about economic growth and development. We already have done 2 lectures on economic growth and development. This would be the last lecture about the chapter 3rd. In the last video, I asked you some of the questions, and these questions were about what is just transition, how India is taking over and talking about or transitioning towards a greener economy, what would be the impacts of transmission lines on different birds. Now, once we discuss all of this, we need to understand that there is environmental cost to development, and once we start developing and once we start that this development and growth should be sensible and sensitive towards the environmental costs, then there comes one more challenge, that if we are transitioning towards greener economy, we are again interacting with the environment. For example, there was recently a case with Great Indian Bustard in the states of Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, and in this case what happened was that it was a challenge that Great Indian Bustard is actually facing problems in their flight from one place to another place due to transmission lines. In that case, it was the Rajat Singh case. Supreme Court actually talked about the just transition. What is just transition? That if you are developing electricity transmission lines in order to have cleaner electricity, you should not damage, in order to save the I would say the planet from fossil fuels. We are transitioning towards electricity, but that electricity should not be at the cost of damaging the habitat of already or the flyways of birds, or whether you talk about the flamingos which turn the sambar lake into pink color, or you talk about Great Indian Bustard, or you talk about any other bird or any other animal per se. For example, the Panna Tiger Reserve that was recently in news, and what was there? That the dam, or I would say the reservoir of water, was actually damaging the habitat, and that was challenging the mobility of tigers. Similarly, there are other issues also. So, in order to transition towards greener economy, in order to transition towards development, we should not damage already established pathways, corridors, or flyways of the, I would say, flora and fauna of the nation. Now, once we talk about this, there is one more concept to understand the green economy, that is green GDP. Before we go into this concept that what green GDP is, what are the environmental consequences of transitioning towards or developing greener growth, I would like to highlight that at SRIRAM's IAS, we provide you with mentorship. And also with that, I would like to help and understand that all the students who are facing problems in these lectures or any other lecture, or per se in the entire UPSC journey, or they are having problems in streamlining their time management or doing their daily chores, whatever the problem is, you can talk it out, discuss it with your mentor. They will help you in time management, stress management, psychological, and they will also help you in academics. They will also help you to target and strategize or draw the roadmap towards your next attempt. For that, what you need to do is, you just need to connect with us. This is the QR code for mentorship form. This is the QR code where you can connect with us on Telegram. Further, there are contact details in which you can connect with me also. So, what is green GDP per se? It is the index of economic growth that factors into environmental consequences. For example, as I say, that if we are developing an infrastructure, or I would say a roadway or a highway, and this highway is through a national park, we may add up capital into our GDP, but we must deduct, we must subtract the environmental cost caused due to this national park, because this will lead to what? I would say translocation of animals, or I would say this will damage their habitat, and if it damages their habitat, we need to understand that after that we need to incur costs. For example, lately we might be also knowing about the project Cheetah, the reintroduction of cheetahs from African continent to Indian subcontinent. Now that came at a cost, and that cost was borne by GDP of this, by economy of this nation. That cost, once it is incurred, that means we are subtracting the amount of that translocation. So that is how environmental consequences are actually done and calculated in this green GDP. So thereby, from the final value of goods and services, we will subtract the cost of ecological degradation and is deducted to arrive at green GDP. Clear with this? So basically there was in United Kingdom, there was a committee which was established under Parthasarathi Das Gupta, Professor Shri Partha Das Gupta, which was commissioned by UK government, and this was an independent research or assessment at global level. What they recommended was the Economics of Biodiversity 2021, which was the research paper, and they said that natural capital is not given its due place in the economics. So all the economists of the world, or all the economists of the countries, they are not talking about, or they are not calculating natural capital when it comes to GDP calculation. So thereby we should calculate natural capital, and once we calculate it, then only we can prevent the erosion of this natural capital. So annual subsidies given by all the governments globally cost around $6 trillion, and these subsidies basically are there are indirectly or directly leading to environmental destruction and degradation. So what they recommended was, they found that most governments are on unsustainable economic growth, whereby they are exploiting nature than protecting it. Thereby, they call for that we all should think, act and take measures for protection and enhancement of the prosperity of natural world. So how should we do this? They recommended that we should discourage the production and consumption through the policies, and we should change the prices and behaviors. We should enforce a set of standards for reuse, recycle, and basically this will further lead to circular economy. And there was one entire question on circular economy in UPSC Prelims 2025. That what circular economy is, does it reduce, reuse, and the 4 R's of the economy, circular economy, if you know it, or the 5 R's of circular economy, if you know them properly, you could have answered the question. That was the main thing. And I would astonish you that before prelims, 10 days before prelims, I took an entire video of 15 minutes on circular economy, in which we discussed a case study, in which we discussed how circular economy is implemented, and straight question was asked in UPSC prelims. That is why when you have a know-how of current affairs, when you have a know-how of economy, when you have a know-how of subject, then you can target that, okay, this is the important news, this is what I should take care of, this is what I should note down, and then you will find those questions, you will find those topics in your exam. Moving further, India also adopted to natural capital accounting. Now we are accounting natural capital. As per Das Gupta committee, we should account for natural capital. We should calculate how much natural capital we have. These natural capital or natural resources include biodiversity, soil, water, air. If we have cleaner air, it means it is our capital. If we have cleaner water, it means it's our capital. We should calculate for it. Thereby, all the natural capital that supports one another, they should have the same importance as man-made capital in accounting. If we are calculating a building, we should also calculate land, because if this building is helping us to establish an office and a factory which produces, for example, rupees 10 lakh crore of or 1 lakh crore rupees of GDP, this land also helps us to establish this building, and further we can also use this land for agriculture, for settlement, for housing, for multiple other purposes. Therefore, we should develop measures and we should calculate national income, and this national income which does not otherwise represent the genuine growth, which is failing on representing or accounting for genuine growth, we should try to inculcate that genuine growth by including the natural capital. So how should we do this? India long back started in 2008, and we first of all adopted the National Biodiversity Action Plan. Once we adopted this National Biodiversity Action Plan, this highlights the importance of natural goods and services, value of ecosystem, which aims to incorporate the costs into national accounting of these natural capital, the cost of natural capital into national accounting. Then in 2010, there was this Nagoya Biodiversity Summit, which commonly is known as Nagoya Summit. India hereby declared that we will adopt the natural resource accounting. United Nations also decided on global partnership to mainstream the economic planning, that all the countries at global level should partner, collaborate and cooperate with each other, so that we do what? We do calculate this natural capital of land, because you must also remember that we have targets about land degradation, that there should be no land degradation. We have targets of having net zero emissions by 2070. Now, all of these targets should at least first start with calculating that how much cleaner air we have. If we have this much cleaner air, how to make sure that all of our air or all of our emissions into atmosphere should be nullified. That requires that we should calculate how much forests we have, how much carbon sinks we have, how much wealth do we have in terms of mangroves, in terms of coral reefs. That is how we should understand it. So in 2011, there was an expert group headed by Partha Das Gupta, which convened to examine the prospects of developing green national accounts. And in 2013, the expert group submitted its report on Green National Accounts Framework. And after this report, we currently have India's Green Growth Vision. What is this vision? India currently aspires for becoming Viksit Bharat, a developed world by 2047. Further, we also aspire that we should have net zero emissions by 2070. Now, these are the green growth targets of India. Further, we need our growth trajectory to prioritize the sustainable growth or sustainable development alongside the economic growth. For this, what we need to do is, first of all, we need to transit towards renewable energy. We need to increase the share of renewable energy in terms of solar electricity, wind powered electricity, and we should reduce the fossil fuel reliance. We should decrease the use of fossil fuels. We should increase the nuclear energy, wind energy, solar energy. That is why we have Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Yojana, which was asked in UPSC Prelims. Clear? Second, green hydrogen. What is green hydrogen? We should invest in cleaner energies, and this green hydrogen was also asked by UPSC in Prelims. We should invest in green steel, that is cleaner technologies, reducing carbon emissions, whether that is decreasing the emissions during the production of steel, or whether that is recycling steel in terms of sponge iron. Further, India should also aspire for becoming greener in agriculture also, like and in day-to-day life. For example, India lately adopted or started promoting organic farming. Organic farming, Sikkim became the first state in the entire nation to become fully organic state. Then Lakshadweep also turned into organic. Recently, you must also remember that Sri Lanka entirely banned its fertilizers and mandated that all of the agriculture should be organic in nature. So, sustainable agriculture improves what? Soil health, conserving the water, reducing the chemical inputs. Further, we also introduced the Mission Life. This Mission Life or lifestyle for environment. For example, what does this mean? Recently, I was going through a topper's copy, the evaluation of a topper. I guess, I don't remember the name of that topper. She mentioned about, he or she, I don't remember. She mentioned about Mission Life, and she said that it starts with basic habits, the day-to-day habits of breakfast, lunch and dinner. How does that mean? That if you are thinking about turning or making yourself responsible about the climate, about the environment, then the mission life will be actually implemented. How does that mean? If you are actually, for example, you use a packet of milk in early morning. Instead of throwing that paper into directly dustbin, you should do what? Or that plastic wrapper into a dustbin, what you should do is, you should think that I need to segregate it. I need to differentiate the wet waste from the dry waste. I need to differentiate from the organic waste from the plastic waste. I was going through a case study of a Delhi couple who turned their home into a natural stay. And in Delhi, when there is 700 AQI outside, their home was having an AQI of 50, just 50. That too in Delhi only, without air purifiers. When there was hot, humid temperatures in Delhi with 50 degrees, their home was having a temperature of 27 degrees. That is how you should understand that mission life actually works. This mission was introduced in G20 summit lastly, and this actually tries that all the community should change their lifestyle habits towards greener economy. Clear? Further, we need to understand about Stiglitz Commission. What was this commission about? This commission was on the measurement of economic performance and social progress. Remember, economic performance, that how much growth are we doing, and social progress, how much socially are we progressing, like how much health, education, living standards are getting better. So there are two aspects, growth and development. That is Stiglitz Commission. Remember it, this commission was under Joseph Stiglitz. It was established by French government in 2008. Our book talks about this commission. We can clearly use the recommendations and we can clearly use this example into our mains. The final report in 2009 talked about a criticism of GDP. Remember, the UPSC asked a question that why GDP is not actually a proper or perfect parameter for accounting. You can clearly mention Stiglitz Commission that how it critiqued the GDP. It said that GDP as a measure of progress, and it also mentions that it is as a measure of demanded items like leisure and any metrics of social progress are not included into GDP. Thereby we should understand leisure time, trust, mutual confidence, community confidence. These are, or I would say sharing the meals. These are some of the aspects which we read in the last lecture about happiness and development. These aspects should be included. And then we talk about life economics. That is all about life economics. That when we talk about human development, when we talk about social progress, regenerative economy, circular economy, this is life economics. So this was discussed in United Nations Summit of the Future. Remember, this summit took place in 2024. This summit highlighted a crucial shift. It talked about that life economics and the future of development. Life economics and the future of development is a paradigm, and it should align with economic activities with sustainable development goals, because it is being argued across newspapers that we are not even near to achieve 10 sustainable goals. Leave aside 17 by 2030. Lastly, also, when there were MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, which were to be achieved by 2015, they were also not achieved, all of them. Similarly, SDGs at least should have been achieved by all the economies of the world, but they are not. We are not on the track to achieve them. Why? Because we are not talking about life economics. Now, this is a crucial aspect for your mains exam. You must remember it and must keep a note of it. Life economics talks about human development, regenerative economy, impact economy. What kind of impact is there? It is not only on natural ecosystem. It is not only on natural habitat. The impact is across multiple dimensions. It is about inequality, it is about poverty, it is about malnutrition, it is about environmental damage, forests, climate. All of it is included into it. Further, planetary boundaries, well-being economy, all of this is included into life economics. Understood? Next, what are the alternatives of economic framework? That when we talk about economy per se is about GDP, is about growth, is about development. But there is more to it. How should we think out of the box? The narrow, or I would say narrow understanding of economics, which talks about just growth and development. Our economic aspect or perspective should be beyond this. And thereby we will come across terms like donut economy. What is a donut economy? You all might have had a donut in a restaurant or a food court. Donut or the shape of donut. This concept of donut economy was given by Kate Raworth, and he mentions about this thing that we as humans have basic necessities. Basic necessities like food, shelter and clothing. Now, once we fulfill these basic necessities, then we have potential to grow. That is to fulfill the comfort level of all of us. That is, if we have minimal food, minimal shelter and minimal clothing, that is minimalism. But then again, we need to find out what the comfort of all of us. That this clothing should be good, this shelter should be good, this should be dignified. But beyond that, when we over-exploit the natural resources, thereby when I talked about the Earth Overshoot Day in one of the lectures, in the first lecture of this chapter 3rd, I mentioned about that all of the students should read about Earth Overshoot Day, which is a concept in the environment, not in economics. But you must remember that donut economy talks about that. That Earth actually is overshooting every year. We are having illogical, irrational consumption of Earth's natural resources, which means whatever was there for future generations is being consumed by current generation. Whatever Earth can produce in 1 year is being utilized and consumed in less than 1 year. That is why this donut economy, well-being economy, solidarity economy, impact economy should be understood. Donut economy balances first, essential needs and planetary boundaries, that to how much extent can we exploit the environment. Social and solidarity economy prioritizes social and environmental well-being over profit. Well-being economy talks about serving the people and planet, not serving yourself, not talking about profit. The first lecture, if you remember, I told you that Adam Smith and Simon Kuznets talked about the early classicals of economics. They talked about invisible hand, and they said that there will be the forces of profit and the forces of marginal utility, which will tend producers and consumers to act rationally. Producers will act to gain more profit. Consumers will act to gain more utility. Both will fight on that, but that is the narrowest form of economics. But we need to understand the holistic form of economics. Further, we will just explain all of this later, but before that, when we talk about economics or when we talk about all of these approaches, I would like to highlight over here. Okay, first we will go to donut economics, then we will come back to the other aspects of it. Donut economics basically talks about the Kate Raworth, who gave this concept. It talks about a visual framework. A framework whereby we will account for sustainable development. That is, we have essential needs like food, water, healthcare. This is the essential part of economics, or this is the essential part of life, where we should understand that our needs or our essential needs are limited to a particular level. And if we remain in this level, do you remember the concept of which we discussed earlier, production possibility curve? This is mentioned in NCERT. You should read about it. Production possibility frontier talks about a scenario whereby we can produce two goods. For example, good A and good B. And we can produce only a limited capacity or a limited amount of good A and good B. Now, this production possibility curve says that if we produce it at this level, this is our potential GDP. But if we go beyond this, because we are utilizing all our resources, all our natural, human capital, any resource we have, all the resources, we can produce this much of goods and this much of services. Once we produce this much of goods and services, if we need to produce more, either we need more resources, either we need to import more resources or acquire more resources, or what we can do is we can over-exploit. Similarly, this donut economy also talks about this thing, that if we remain in this level, this is where we stay below our potential. But then again, there are safe limits where we can have all the resources which Earth produces within 1 year, and we can consume them all by having less climate change, by conserving biodiversity. Within these safe limits, all of this is conserved, not exploited. But when we go beyond this, thereby this is the planetary boundary. This is the boundary. When we go beyond this boundary, we will exploit the planet. This is where the planetary boundaries are actually to be met, that we cannot cross these planetary boundaries. We cannot cross the Earth overshoot day. Clear yahan tak? Now, once we are done with these concepts, we need to remember one more thing. Okay, this is donut economics. Now we will change the topics from hereby, and now this slide, what you need to do is you need to utilize this slide once you are discussing about the economic frameworks, or once you are discussing about that how should our economic thinking change and how should our economic parameters or parameters of growth and development change. We should include all of this into our economic accounting, natural accounting and total GDP accounting. That is all from the developmental aspect. Once this is done, we need to understand two more concepts or 2-3 more concepts. That is the concept of current day development, that how we actually measure a country as developed or a country as underdeveloped or a country as developing. Once we discuss this, the first aspect is how we measure and compare economies. Now we will be hereby collating the concepts of growth and the development both. We will be again revising the first chapter, the second chapter and the third chapter. The concepts of all of these discussions which we had till now will be revised from hereby onwards. Now we remember that we had a barter system in which we used to trade goods with goods. But then we have a monetary system whereby we have currencies which we are using to trade goods. Currencies are being used to exchange and have transactions. Simple. Now remember, or you all might be aware of this thing, that recently rupee is to dollar was around 90:1. That $1 costs us 90 rupees. Now this is something which came into news, and this is something which we call market exchange rate. Now what is market exchange rate? This is the rate at which a person can sell dollar to a person who is purchasing the dollar in rupees. This is the rate which market is defining about the exchange rate between dollar and rupee. How many dollars can be exchanged with how many rupees? Clear? It is simply a rate which we can say, for example, if I have to buy this remote, if it is selling in the market and this remote is worth of 100 rupees, it means one remote costs 100 rupees. That is the cost of this remote or the price of this remote. Usually we talk about that. But when I talk about its factory price, it may be only 50 rupees. Why is it selling in the market at 100 rupees? Because there are very few remotes and there are too many people who actually want this remote. So due to increased demand, the price of this remote got high. And due to high price, it is now sold at double the price of, double the cost, or double the factory price, or double the factory cost. That is how dollar is priced at currently market exchange rate. Because of the supply and demand of dollar, it actually talks about the market exchange rate of dollar. But why do we need this dollar? Because we needed at least one international economy with which all the countries will satisfy themselves. We will talk about this later, that once in the history we used to have different currencies across the world. Some people in the Yap Island, they used to have stone currency. The entire or one big stone was of a size of this board, or some of the stones were of the size of one building, and that was the currency of Yap Islanders. That is long back in the ancient history. Further, we had coins, we had terracotta coins, pottery seals, we had metal coins, gold coins, silver coins, copper coins, plastic currency and paper currency. But at the international level, we need to compare these currencies. So, after the world wars, this was decided that okay, between all the economists, this was set that dollar, we should promote dollar, and this dollar will be backed by gold. There will be a gold standard which will be established in the world, and in order to publish $1 or in order to print $1, there will be exact amount of gold kept as a reserve for that dollar. So thereby dollar became the international currency. Slowly every country started accepting dollar. Some of the countries replaced their currency with dollar itself. Some of the countries started comparing and converting their currency into dollar. Clear? Now, once we understand this, we also need to understand that it is not just about currency to currency conversion. We can also understand that in the, I would say, developing world and in the developed world, the costing, domestic market, inflation is totally different. Concepts which we discussed earlier. For example, the costs of production, the factors of production in USA and the factors of production in China, they are entirely different. Why so? Land in USA may cost more rent than land in China. Capital in USA may cost more interest than in China. Labor in USA may cost more wages than in China. Similarly, there are two different worlds. But when we talk about purchasing power, for example, I am eating a one meal in India, one thali or one dosa I am eating in India, and one big platter I am eating in US. That platter in USA will cost me around $50 or $20 or $10. But the same thing in India will cost me 100 rupees. Which means a person living in USA will have to pay around 900 rupees for that one platter, while as a person in India will have to pay only 100 rupees for the same platter in India, which means 900 or I would say $10 and 100 rupees are same. It sets $1 equals to 10 rupees. Now, why do we compare this purchasing power parity, or why do we compare this, that do we actually have to compare this with meals only, or do we have to compare the economies or the two worlds with the purchasing power only? Why? Because do you remember in the development chapter we discussed about this thing. We discussed that all of it depends that do I have good health, do I have good food, do we have good living standards, do we have good education. Now all of this costs. Whether I go for education, whether I go for food, whether I go for cooking fuel, whether I go for electricity, this in developing world, in India, in China costs less than in USA. So thereby, if we compare in terms of income, then we can never compare with USA. For example, in USA, one labor for 1 hour charges $18. One labor for 1 hour charges $18, which in India would be roughly around 1800 or 1600 rupees. Say for example, 1600 rupees for 1 hour. But in India, if a labor is working in USA, he is costing or charging 1600 rupees for one labor, 1 hour. It means he may earn around, if he works for 5 or 8 hours a day, he may earn around 10,000 rupees, say for example. But in India, that is a salary of one person for entire month. If we compare based on income, if we compare based on market exchange rate, then India can never compare with US. Similarly, we can never compare the two economies. We can never have a comparative perspective of two economies. Rather, when we talk about development, development is all about accessibility to the necessities. this person in India who is earning only 10,000 rupees has a good life. In the rural world, in the rural India, he is having food at his home, he is having good nutritious food, he is having everything. He is having good education also within those 10,000 rupees only. But that person in USA might be poor because there everything is costing more than us. That is why we need to discuss that what can we purchase or what products or goods are there available in Indian market and what goods are available in the developed world or in the other economies, whether that is Japan, China, USA, Europe, anywhere. We need to compare economies in terms of purchasing power parity. What is purchasing power parity? That how much purchasing power does my economy, does my currency, does my rupee have as compared to the purchasing power of US dollar, or as compared to the purchasing power of Japanese yen, or as compared to the purchasing power of European sterling or pound. Clear? Now that is purchasing power parity. Now this purchasing power parity corrects the distortions which are there in the market exchange rate. Distortions as in $1 equals to 90 rupees. This is a distortion because this is created because of the supply and demand shock in the dollar. This distortion is created because devaluation of currencies. This distortion is created due to depreciation of currencies. This market distortion should be removed and we should actually talk about the real development, the real purchasing power of the economy, the real accessibility of goods to the people. Then only we can compare economies of the world. Similarly, in order to compare these economies, we will use purchasing power parity of the currencies. Now, how do we compare the economies? How do we understand purchasing power? What we will do is, for example, we will take 4, 5 or 8, 10 goods. Say for example, 400 goods or 4 goods. I will hereby ask 3 of my goods, like for example, 1 mouse, 1 pen and 1 remote and this mobile phone. Clear? These 4 goods, if I compare them, that how much their price is there in India and how much their price is there in USA, or how much price of a thali is there in India and how much price of that thali is there in US. But the goods should be of same quality, same nature, same quantity and at least same quality levels should be there maintained. And then we will compare that how much powerful my economy is, how many rupees do I need to have this product and how many dollars do I need to have this product. Then I can compare that if this product is of $2, if this product is of $2 and same product is of 100 rupees, that means $2 equals to 100 rupees. Remember in 10th class we used to have that maths of A equals to X and X equals to B, therefore A equals to B. Similarly, we are doing that only. Clear? Market rates are influenced by capital flows, forex reserves, growth prospects and geopolitics, not always reflecting the true purchasing power. That is why we need purchasing power parity. So why does it matter? Because it gives us true comparison, it gives us ground reality and it gives us the poverty estimates, and UN is creating Human Development Index for accurate poverty assessments. Clear? So this will help us in truly comparing the economies and understanding purchasing power parity and poverty. Understood? By purchasing power parity, if we talk about this, world's largest economy is China, then United States and then India. As per purchasing power parity, this is an astonishing fact which you all might not be knowing. One more thing which you need to remember is by market rate, when we talk about exchange rate or market exchange rate, India is 4th largest economy. By purchasing power parity, India is 3rd largest economy. This is the question which was asked by UPSC. Asked by UPSC in I guess 2020 or 2021. India's GDP 4.25 trillion, 1/4 of its purchasing power parity value. Further, IMF projects India will overtake Japan as 3rd largest economy, which was projected in 2025 and this will be achieved in 27 or sooner. Further, we also need to remember that there is a currency gap. For example, there is gap between US dollar and Indian rupee, and this currency gap or currency confidence gap, GDP is higher by market rate than purchasing power parity, because we know GDP of India is $4.25 trillion by what? by this market exchange rate, but it is 16 or $1.6 trillion by purchasing power parity, $16 trillion by purchasing power parity. So thereby we should understand that this global confidence is the actual strength. This global confidence is the actual strength. However, if we talk about rupee and Chinese yuan, US GDP or US market rate, make sure that globally everyone is confident of this market exchange rate, ensures that globally everyone is confident of US power and strength of its economy, because that makes its economy much stronger. However, if we talk about China and India or rupee and yuan, GDP is lower by market exchange rate and higher by purchasing power parity. This means that we are still resilient economies, but as per purchasing power parity, this economy says that if our market exchange rate is lower and purchasing power parity is high, it means that our currencies are actually undervalued or they are devalued. There is a devaluation in the economies. Somehow it is managed depreciation also, or somehow it is depreciation led by market forces. Now we need to understand what is depreciation and devaluation of the currency. Depreciation of rupee will mean simply when the power of rupee, when the exchange rate of rupee decreases as per market exchange rate, because there is high demand of dollar. That is why the value of rupee or the market exchange rate of rupee is depreciating. Second, devaluation means when countries' fiscal policy or monetary policy deliberately takes decisions to devalue their own currency. That has been happening with Chinese currency for a long time. Clear? Donut economy we already discussed. Now, in order to compare the economies with one another, there was this McDonald Big Mac Index. Now, what is McD Big Mac Index? This basically is the large size burger of McD. Now, this burger, its cost in USA and its cost in India is compared with each other, because McD is producing the same burger in India, McD is producing the same burger in USA. Now, what it was developed by the Economist magazine, and it is based on purchasing power parity. It talks about that if we see the price of this burger is 226 rupees in India, while as the same burger costs $6 in USA. By this logic, the purchasing power parity or the purchasing power rate or the exchange rate should be 37 rupees. By this logic, the exchange rate should be 37 rupees. However, currently it is at around 90 rupees. It is at around 90 rupees. So thereby it suggests that our currency is actually a bit devalued. Clear? That is why we need to understand that there are disparities between market exchange rate and purchasing power parity. Now, once we are done with this, we need to understand that when international comparison happens, we actually classify economies in the name of developed, developing, emerging world, underdeveloped, least developed, upper middle income countries. Now, this whole classification of economies across the world is done at international level, either by IMF, World Bank, other institutions, United Nations. They classify the economies, they classify the countries as per their economic status. Clear? Now, how does this happen? Countries are classified based on GDP, based on Human Development Index, based on infrastructure, industrialization and other things. For example, the developed world or the developed economies, which we usually refer to USA, Europe, they have advanced development post-industrial revolution. Their service sector is dominant. Developing world, this is underdeveloped. Their industrial base is low. They have low Human Development Index. They have high demographic dividend or high demographic growth. That means their population is rising at a larger level. While as emerging markets, what are these markets? These are those markets, per se, India is somehow called as emerging market because they have rapid growth, their growth rate is high, they are transitioning towards the developed world. They will be called as developed economies in near future. Clear? What are these emerging markets? These emerging markets where rapid growth and rapid industrialization is there, they have low to middle income per capita income, while as their growth potential is high. They are increasing in productivity and purchasing power. Middle class is also growing. Improved infrastructure is there. However, they are volatile due to political risks. There are conflicts, there are coups, there are chaos, there are riots in these regions. Clear? There are these problems. However, the main example of this is BRICS nation: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, Latin America, Middle East, African countries are so. Clear? IMF also classifies the economies in terms of advanced economies, EMDs. About 40 economies are classified by IMF on the basis of high per capita income. Emerging markets and developing economies, all remaining countries are called as emerging markets and developing economies. Clearly understood? One more classification is given by World Bank. The classification goes on from high income, upper middle income, lower middle income and low income. First, it is if the income per capita is more than $14,000, it is called as high income. 4,000 to 14,000, high or upper middle income. 1,146 to 4,500, it is lower middle income and then low income countries. This is the classification given by World Bank. Further, the countries in the Gulf region, whether that is Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, Oman, they are classified as Gulf Cooperation Council classifies them that they are developing economies but with high income. Why? Because their income is high because of their dependence on oil and gas, because of their nature, and they are limited in terms of export baskets. They are underdeveloped and these economies prevent them, or the underdevelopment prevents them because of their high growth rate due to oil and natural gas. They are having a high income, but the actual growth or actual development at the ground level is low. That is why they are not classified as developed economies. Clear? One more thing which you need to remember is, in order for a country to grow and progress towards developed nation, these economies are somehow stuck in middle income trap. Like if we talk about this, lower middle income and upper middle income, there is very much difficult phase from transitioning from lower middle income to high middle income or upper middle income. Why does this happen? Because some of the countries, they do have low middle income countries, they are low middle income countries, but their growth stops at some point. And after that, what happens is, they still have traditional drivers, like their labor is cheap, which is not increasing its cost. They are low at industrial level. There is corruption. There is significant delays due to bureaucratic nature. Innovation is very less. There is less, I would say, investment in research and development. In India, it is less than 1% of GDP. Human capital deficit, their demography or the demographic dividend is very less. Because in India also we are seeing that around 40-42% of the people who are graduating every year are not having market ready skills. This is the main phenomena behind the middle income trap, which you should write in your exam, because skill development and upskilling has been one of the themes of UPSC mains. Clear? Now this middle income challenge can be, or in India we are also facing this middle income challenge. This can be, or I would say identified, or I would say this can be located by the numbers of employment. We should boost the research and development and innovation in India, improve the education and skills, enhance the infrastructure, and we should escape this trap of low middle income by upskilling. One more term which you might find in news is least developed countries. What are these least developed countries? They are classified by United Nations, and United Nations highlights that there are severe challenges in these economies. Like these economies have very low income per capita. Around $1,088 per capita income is there. Their human assets are very weak. Poor, malnourished, hunger, anemia, stunting, low birth rate, this is highly prevalent. Low, I would say high child mortality, high infant mortality, high maternal mortality is there. High vulnerability is also there. Susceptibility to economic and environmental shocks is also there. That is what is leading the nation. That is what is making these nations face, or that is what is making the problems for these nations. Okay? Next, LDC graduation criteria, that how a country should increase, or how a country should understand that how we can develop or we can progress from least developed country to the upper middle income country, or the we can escape the trap from low middle income country to upper middle income country. Okay? Now, first of all, income threshold should increase to around $1306 per capita. Second, there should be human assets, that is, we should invest in health and education. Third, economic resilience should be, I would say, developed by making the economy resilient. For example, the programs which Indian government has introduced, like Atmanirbhar Bharat, the production linked incentive scheme, the technology transfer, these will make the economy actually resilient. Clear? Currently, we have around 44 such countries which are classified as least developed countries. They are eligible for special international support. They include preferential market access and technical assistance criteria, which is revised every 3 years. Clear? One more thing. That is, when we talk about GDP, when we talk about development, growth and development, both of them, we should understand that there is something more which goes beyond GDP. What is this? That we started with the evolution metrics. Like, for example, in the early years of 1930s, we used to focus primarily on GDP. Post that, in 1990s, we had developmental index, or we had a focus on developmental economics. From 2008 to 9, the critics of GDP, like Stiglitz Commission, financial crisis, prompted thinking that should state be again called into question, should we again think about the role of state, the role of development, or should we go beyond this development and GDP? That is, by saving the planet, by understanding planetary boundaries. Then in 2010, we introduced this inequality adjusted human development index, and post that, gross happiness index was also introduced. Bhutan's gross happiness index, this gained the global recognition. In 2020s, now we are seeing the planetary pressures human development index, wealth inequality, this wealth adjusted human development index, life economics, the integrated sustainable frameworks, life mission. We are witnessing circular economies. Now, this is how we are taking the subject of economics beyond GDP, beyond development, and beyond its, I would say, the boundaries which were set traditionally. Clear? So, thereby, we hereby conclude all of this. There is the, at the last, we have the summary, or I would say, main summary slides, in which once you go through all of this, you will find that all of the sustainability imperatives and all of the life economics or natural capital recognition, which we recently discussed in this lecture also, this all has been summarized. And with this, we conclude the chapter 3rd, and we should understand that if a question comes in mains about development or economic growth, which has been a persistent theme of UPSC, always every year we find a question about this. So thereby what we should do is, we should understand that there is this main topic about development, and we should conclude with this, and we should at least give one way forward to these questions, because as per or till now our understanding has developed that in the past we used to focus on growth, then development, then multiple other aspects of development, then going beyond development and understanding the nature of development, natural capital. We should at least think that this developmental progress is a thing which will persist, and it will expand its horizons much more than this. There is, I would say, exploration of space, militarization of space. There are questions about the environment, or about the atmosphere of the, or about the space, or about universe exploration, where economics also has a part to play. That is why there should be a way forward, and with that we should conclude these questions. Understood? Clearly, that would be all from my side, and that is how we conclude this lecture. From the next video, we will start chapter 4th of this book. With this, I conclude today's discussion. Thank you once again for being here. Jai Hind.